Wow.
Hi, my name is Dr. Pat Webbink. I'm a psychologist. We're sitting here in my Bethesda, Maryland office, and I'm here to talk to you about saying goodbye to fear. Um, if you are riddled with fear, the best way to get rid of it is to go into your own spirituality. If you have a spirituality, whatever it is, if you can tap into that, fear and spirituality don't mix. So if you are a very spiritual person and you really believe and trust in God, that God will take care of you and that everything will be okay, then you don't have fear. There is a book called Love is Letting Go of Fear. It's an old book. And it talks about, in a way, the same kind of thing, that you can't be filled with love and filled with fear. And I think it's a wonderful concept. I myself learned as I went more deeply in my own spiritual path that fear went away. So when I see people who really don't have any kind of spiritual thing that they believe in, it's much harder to help them let go of fear, because there's a belief system that you'll be taken care of and that everything will be all right. This does not mean that you are going to be passive and just sitting around for God to take care of you.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one of the things. Definitely, if there is somebody out there that's dealing with fear, I want to say specifically with procrastination, it's the number one thing. We looked at procrastination, but we also looked at the fear of failure. How do you address that in your own practice?
I was thinking, by the way, of a joke just before you stop me, so I'm going to tell you the joke, and if you want to not have it, that's fine. There was a guy. I'm not good at telling jokes, so I'm sure I've forgotten half of it, but I remember kind of the punchline. So the guy prayed to God that he would rescue him, and so his home was flooding, and so he was going higher and higher up to the top of the house, and a helicopter came by, and the helicopter said, "Would you like me to, rescue you?" And he said, "Oh, no, God is going to take care of me." So then there was a boat that came by, and the boat said, "Would you like us to take you somewhere?" And he said, "No. God is going to take care of me." And then finally he's up to his neck in water and he drowns. And then he goes to heaven and he says, "God, why didn't you take care of me?" And God said, "I sent you a helicopter, I sent you a boat, and you didn't accept them." So that reminded me about how you have to have some part in what happens. And we were talking earlier about someone I worked with years ago. I worked with him on centering and getting himself into a very, very peaceful state. And he did it very well. And then he called me one day and said, "I have to come back and see you. I've been failing at centering." And I said, "Okay, come on in." And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, I've been trying to center, but I have this guy who's living in my house, and he smokes, and he leaves his cigarette on the edge of the table. And the ashes are falling down, and I just don't feel at all centered." And I said, "Good, because your house could burn up." So there are times that you want to get out of that spiritual state and look at reality and do whatever you can. You have to work with God on things. But the basic fear, when you are ridden with fear, whether it's fear of success or fear of failure, whatever kind of fear, if you can hand it over, then you're going to be much better able to deal with everything and be in that state of mind where you can deal with things. So you can ask me your more specific question if you want to now.
I think this is awesome. Well, more specifically is, again, that people often deal with what we call that number one fear, and that is the fear of failure. And you just addressed it, through the statement of the guy, not wanting to catch the boat or catch the train, whatever that might be. But now let's talk about fear of failure, because we realize that most people, whether that's on their job, in business, or taking on a new position, maybe in their ministry, they have a fear of failure. Like,
okay, I'll give you another example from my own life. I was in school, and I always knew I wanted to be a psychologist, and I met this guy in the library. My grades were not good, and I said to him, "What's your secret? I see that you are going to get a master's in psychology. What's your secret?" And he said, "I work." I said, No. What's your secret?" And he said, "I work." And all of a sudden I realized that I was afraid that if I worked, I still might not do well, because in high school I did very well and it was easy for me, but in college it was much harder. And I realized that if I didn't work, I was not going to do well, and I couldn't have my chosen profession. So I decided I am going to work. Mm-hmm. And if I don't do well, I at least can say to myself, look myself in the mirror and say, I tried as hard as I could, and if I can't, I can't. Well, of course, I got shot up to high dean's list and did very, very well. And so that, again, is really along the same lines that you have to work with God on things, okay?
I love it. I love it. Well, I think we're done here, because you're saying the most important thing. You have to work with God. You have to work with the fact that there is a natural and there is a spiritual side. But you've covered it all. I really want to thank you for inviting me into your home and sharing with us. So next we'll be talking to the panel, and they'll be asking you questions. So keep that phone.
Okay, I will.
All right. Thank you.
I'll be glad to.